I use them for this thing, and I don't know why. A lot of people. I start talking. I have utilities, and it's for every utility in the area, but it includes contractors, and we've got Yampa Valley Electric Company. Pretty sure they didn't mean to. Because
is this about you? Yeah. So after redoing it again, it kind of gets fire line, not to domestic irrigation. Have two different feeds. We did find it.
Can someone on Teams, can you let me know if you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we're going to get started. I'm talking into this for the benefit of the people on Teams, not that you guys wouldn't be able to hear me, but this is just so they can hear me. I'm Michelle Carr, City of Steamboat Springs Water and Sewer Manager, and I'm the one who sent you the invite, so thanks for being here. Our admin, who would have typically done that, is on maternity leave, so naturally I screwed it up, and I used a much larger email list, so I invited all sorts of people who probably aren't interested. So this is for, just to be clear, this is for water and sewer standard specifications updates. So if that does not pertain to you, then please don't feel embarrassed about getting up and leaving if you don't want to hear it, but you're certainly welcome to stay. And I apologize for any confusion that I created because I'm not very tech savvy. Anyway. Again, thanks for being here. This is for the 2023 standard specifications update for water and sewer for the City of Steamboat Springs only. Mount Werner is, of course, a separate service area, and these are not going to pertain to Mount Werner. Just do a few introductions. We have Amber Gregory here today. She's the city's utility engineer. We have Brian Morse, I know your last name. He is the water and sewer supervisor. And then we have our consultant here, and we have Rebecca, Megan, and Jake. And all of us have been working together since last fall on going through these standards, which haven't been updated since 2010 before now. So they were in desperate need of updating. And that's what we've been working on. And what's available in the back of the room, I printed out a few copies of the draft of the updated specs. And then I sent out an email earlier today, again, to probably not a good email list, I don't know, to provide everybody the link of where you can access the electronic version of this draft specifications on the city's webpage. If you did not receive that email or you want to receive that email, please send me an email or come talk to me after we're done here, and I will make sure that I send you the link. But if you could also just navigate to the city's webpage, go under Public Works, Utilities, Water, Sewer, and then under Utilities Documents, I believe, is where you can find it. I put the full document, and then it's individual sections in case you're just interested in one particular section. So what we're going to do here is Rebecca with Ultig. She's going to give a brief presentation, just summarizing, hitting the high points of the major changes that are in the draft. What we want from you is if you could review the sections that are interesting to you. If that's all of it, then I'm sorry, because it's super boring. But we're looking for your feedback and input, and we'll be taking that from anyone. You would email me with any suggestions, comments, questions up until the end of the day on Friday, May 12th. And we will take all of those comments, suggestions, and we will work through go through them step by step to discuss whether or not it's appropriate for addressing in the final version of the document. So we can go ahead and get started. If anybody has questions during this, I'm going to give you a microphone so that the people on Teams can hear you, if that's all right.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
So would these be for adoption for the next year's construction season?
So they're actually going to go into effect June 1st. And I know it's a not great timing, not my ideal timing, but it is what it is. You can say we're late for last year, early for next year, whichever. But so if you have a formal approval from us before June 1st, we're not going to impose these updated standards on you. And we will work with you if there's something that is really going to be difficult on a case-by-case basis, depending upon where you are in design. We certainly don't want this to be a burdensome ordeal for anybody, but yeah, we'll certainly work with you if it's going to be a huge issue.
Well, just, if there's any significant material changes you've already in the process, because the lead times are so long for a lot of items now, like
right.
Change a fire hydrant, that would probably be a big problem.
Right. Yeah. So please, if you don't have an approval by June 1st, then something's going to create a real burden for you, then please reach out to myself or Amber and talk to us about that. We want to be flexible because we understand the timing is not ideal for sure. So, but
you guys need to buck up and start doing your job.
Yeah. And if for the people who are on Teams, if you could mute yourself unless you have questions, and we'll be monitoring to, if you could raise your hand if you have any questions, we'll certainly call on you. But in the meantime, if you could mute yourself, that would be really helpful.
I got to go first. Well, they're just not.
Or I will mute you myself.
And
okay.
Saying, how did the job go? Is everything good? Because the installers need to get whacked too, because.
All right. If there's nothing else, then I'll turn it over to Rebecca here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So, whenever you go through updating of standards, we always try to take into consideration how that affects everybody. Whether design or construction, it has some impact. And so we're having this meeting today before they're finalized to make sure we've gathered your feedback and your input before they're done, right? So to make sure we haven't missed anything, or we need to add something else, or we've added something that really causes your heartburn. We want to know about that, and then we'll give you in writing responses to all the updates and all the questions and everything you've asked us in this process. So I just first want to go through what we have. We could go to original sections. We're probably going to renumber a couple sections, so you're going to see that as time goes on. But for clarity today, I left the sections numbered the way they were, so you actually probably recognize those if you've done a lot of work here. And so we have the original sections up there, everything through the special provisions all the way through water, sewer, manholes, water line, and sewer crossings. What I've done on the next sheet on the updated sections is show you some of the changes that we've made. So in an overall view, we've created in section 3 definitions, abbreviations, and approved products. So when somebody just asked, and I forget who that was, about what kind of fire hydrant or those kind of things, that's where you should go to make sure they're still the same, or if you see that changing, that's where you can look for that. We've taken out some sections because they were included in the Public Works engineering standards and these, And we want to have one place to make those modifications. It'll be clearer, they'll be the same. And so instead of having traffic regulations, water pollution control, dust control, revegetation, and pavement removal in here, we refer you off to the right section so that you're following one set of standards instead of multiple sets of standards if those ever diverted or changed. So be aware of that. And then we've gone in and added 4 new sections. On top of that, 32 is backflow prevention. So there's a section on that. We'll talk about that a little more. 46 pre-treatment under the sewer part. 47 lift stations and 48 lining of sewer pipe. So we're keeping basically the same. We'll go through each section so you can see the overall changes. But those are the big restructuring of this thing. And again, when it's finished, the numbering is going to change a little bit, so you'll see that, but at least now you can compare to what's changing in this today, okay? And then just to hit some major points we put on here, I want to hit a couple that aren't up there first. I think the importance of one, there were issues, I think, in the fall last year with some folks turning water valves and dealing with some of the water systems in the city. And so we've strengthened the language in here to really make sure that the city is the one operating any of the water system before it's online. And the importance of that is that there was time wasted and then the state gets involved and everybody else for potential problems with the existing line and water, that you have to go through quite a process to deal with that. So even though everybody knows how to operate a water valve generally, it's not acceptable here to do that. And it has to come from the city to do that. So I'm bringing that up because we spent a lot of time talking about it because it was happening right when we were doing this. And so we really want to make sure there's an understanding about why that's happening and how important that is to the city. The second thing is really talking about, there's some private systems that go in. The city generally focuses on public part of the system, but when you have a water or sewer line that connects to the city's public system, it's important for the city to understand how that gets built, what's coming through that particular line or going out of that particular line, and what it does to the city system. So it's in here, we clarify a lot better when things are going to be looked at and the city's involvement in the review and approval of that process. For those service lines. I think they're 4 inches and larger is the way that I recall that. So we're really looking to make sure that the city systems hold integrity when something private is connected to them. So that's an important element that we spent a lot of time talking about, and how do we do that? We talk about tracer wire. So everything, including private lines over 4 inches, will have tracer wire system in place now. I think that's a change from what you've been seeing. And the importance of that is finding those systems in the future and not having difficulty trying to figure out where things are. And personally, as a person that does a lot of construction, that is really important, especially as something gets in the ground for 10 or 20 years and there's no direct institutional knowledge. It's really important for us to know where things are. We've added shop drawings section so we know the process that we're going to use to do shop drawings. We've added procedures for how things get submitted and what's on the plans and checklists and things like that. And we've added cleanouts and then all those other sections I talked about. So there's quite a bit. I'm going to go through those in a little more detail, but I wanted to give you a sense of overall some of the things that are really important to us. On the next slide, again, we've removed traffic regulation, water pollution, dust control, revegetation, pavement removal. And then we added the ones I talked about before. So you can see that the standards themselves are actually beefed up a little bit more than what you've seen in the past. And so it will take some time for everybody, once these are out, to get used to the change of that. And so we recommend a lot of reading and review of this, and we appreciate comments. So we'll go to section 0. And so again, we've just added, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we've added the process and a little bit more information about what we expect on construction drawings, what that looks like, how that works, and make sure that when the city is doing review of that, we're getting what we need. And actually that saves all of you time and money. Because if you have direct and specific information that's up to date with what the city needs, everybody's on the same page, and we shouldn't have as many issues with that. And then we've updated quite a bit of acceptance process, including final acceptance. And I think that should be clearer. And one of the things that I know is important to the city is that the consulting engineers are generally doing a lot of work in the field to make sure things are done in place, to make sure things happen. And the city is really in need of all the consulting engineers. I don't know if there's any here today or not, but to really do what the specifications ask for, to review and process and approve things and make recommendations the way the specifications are asking for. And by defining that better here, we're going to get a better product. And the city knows those things are covered, and then there's not a rift or an issue later. Because we all know that towards the end of a development project, everybody's in a hurry to get that online, to get your TCOs or your COs started or your building permit started wherever you are in that process, and get things ripping and roaring. So we're looking for the consulting engineers to really have a good handle on what's required out there and make those things happen the way they're supposed to, so that we're saving time. And so we think this will define that better. So if we could move to section 1. Section 1, I've already mentioned under section or part 3 there, the operation of the valves is strictly prohibited in these specifications. The second part is those removal, and then we direct you to where those sections are, so nobody has to go searching and finding, exactly where you're going. So that's pretty straightforward. There's not anything new on section 2. It's just describes applicable standards and other things that relate to these specifications that we have here. In section 3, I just highlight that the approval product list is really important, and that will be most likely a continuous update as time goes on, as things change. For consistency, the city needs certain manufacturers so that they can do maintenance and updates and all those kind of things, and they don't have to hold all that different product all over the place. So that's something you should look at for sure. We put definitions in there in one place instead of spread all over the place, so that there's consistency of what those definitions are and everybody's clear on that. So that's section 3. If we go to section 4, we've looked at, and I mentioned, the private versus public and what comes under these specifications and what doesn't. We've defined that a lot better, and we've created the process to bring in and have the city looking at private lines over 4 inches. So this is where you can read and review that if you have questions about that section. Next, we'll go to section 6, and you can see I'm not trying to go in total detail here, because one, you'll fall asleep, and two, I think it's better to read and have a good understanding of what's important. Section 6, record drawings. It's important, I think, to make sure that the record drawings are correct. The city's taking those all electronically at this point. I think there's been some paper drifting around now. You know, we're working to get up to speed with everybody else and saying, hey, we're going to take all that electronically and make sure it's consistent with what the city has, and in their CAD and in their GIS, they can take those in and update their systems with them. Section 8 is really more about submittals and the timing of the submittal related to shop drawings, related to substitution of materials. And you know, if you run into something that you have a problem with, this is the section to take a look at that. I'm going to stop here and say, are there any questions about 0 to 8? I've kind of hit a bunch of them. I want to make sure that I'm not losing anybody, or if you have questions in general about those. I'm looking over here. I'll look over here too. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anything you need more of?
Timing of improvement.
Basically, you talk into the microphone.
So basically what you're saying is just to define it a little bit better of, in order to get construction water for a 4-inch service, we need to go through this, that, the other. Then we'll be there, and this is what exactly is needed. Probably more of like a bulleted format of walk us through what we need in order to get water and to be able to then move on. Okay.
And a big difference between Mount Warner and the city is Mount Warner typically doesn't require preliminary acceptance prior to a building. Whereas the city is kind of more of a case by case. And that can add like 6 months to a construction schedule. We don't have it.
So you're talking preliminary acceptance for, say, the private lines 4 inches or greater, or for a subdivision?
A subdivision.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments and input. And what we're going to do with that is, you know, depending upon what your question, comment, suggestion is, we're mostly taking all this down and we're going to evaluate it in the next few weeks, certainly. But certainly it's great input, so thank you. So and thanks, Tyler from Mount Warner, for that. Why you got to be different.
So that's 2 separate items, right? One on water line, the water, turning the water on, and then the second is preliminary, right? For you guys, 2 separate processes. I'm asking that so that we write it down, right? That's why I'm.
Right. Preliminary acceptance is a little bit, when you talk about that, that's a full subdivision versus, you know, turning water on is typically more of the private, which we refer to usually as release of water service.
Got it.
And his question was also a broader of just in general punch list items, correct? And
okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, we'll move on. Section 12, materials, equipment, and workmanship. One thing that we changed in the product handling is really the ability to have an inspection of the, pipe that's out there and it's getting damaged. The plan is to really spray X's on those and make sure they're removed from the site. I think, in my experience, sometimes that doesn't happen as readily as it should. And it's really about clarity and making sure that materials are the materials that should be going in the ground and should be accepted by the city. And so that's changed a little bit, and I do want people to be aware of that and make sure if you have questions, you can ask those as well. Section 20 is just about cleanup. We left that in there. I think it's pretty close to the same, but it's a little different, and so we think that needs so much emphasis that we want to make sure that that's within these specifications. The next section, 24, is trenching and bedding, and really we've changed some things on the trenching, backfill, and the bedding that that I think improve with knowledge and what we're going to do and how we're going to do that. So, and that's in some of the details that we've done, and we'll show those details here in a few minutes. Now we're to section 30 on water distribution, piping, and appurtenances. I think one of the biggest things for me is we talked a lot about thrust blocks, and instead of pouring those in the field, we're going to look at precast thrust blocks from here on. And I think what that does is instead of leaving, and I'm not speaking from any experience of doing construction at Steamboat, but you know, a lot of times you see there's so much concrete in the hole, it's really too much, it's all kinds of issues, doesn't quite get done right. And so we think a precast thrust block will really make for a cleaner site and make for easier in the future being able to move that. And so we spent some time working on that and evaluating that to make sure that can work here. So that is part of the change. We've also put a map in the standards to show pipe material, because around, I think it's 12th Street, you could pull that up. We have a change because of the materials in the ground that we use PVC in some places and precap. What am I thinking?
Ductile.
Ductile iron, thanks, sorry. Ductile iron pipe in others. So we've created a map so everybody can tell where that's at. So that will be in the specifications for clarity so that everybody knows where they should be using certain types of pipe.
And just to be clear, that is due to the soil conditions. We see hotter soils on the western side of town for some reason, but not so bad in town.
All right. That will go to section 32. So we've
I'm sorry.
No thought to plastic pipe throughout the district or plastic service lines?
There has been. So there is that. We don't mind when you're talking plastic. You're talking like the pure core and everything for.
Or C900 main lines in downtown.
Personally, I would love C900 in downtown, but we're not restricting anybody to just ductile from the 12th east. We're specifying that it has to be PVC from 12th west. There's not an option. Anything on the other side for the city, you can use either or. It's your preference. We're not going to steer you in any different direction. As far as water services go, I believe Rebecca will be discussing that maybe in a little bit. And Michelle's going to.
So, yep, that's definitely a big one, and that is something that we are considering. But I don't have an answer for you yet. But that is still something that we are discussing. Thank you. Sorry.
On the precast thrust blocks, so those are supposed to bear on undisturbed soil. I guess I'm just having a hard time envisioning how you would actually install that.
They're having a hard time.
Envisioning how you would install a precast thrust block and have it bear on undisturbed soil.
They usually have handles, so you can lower those in and put them right next. I've used them a bunch myself, and so I can tell you that it does work.
Kind of like when we've used, for a temporary thrust block, we've used the ready blocks and you just drop them in the hole. So you're just going to have to, dig around a little bit differently. If you have questions, comments, and concerns. Yeah.
Oh, so as opposed to the surface area on undisturbed soil, weight would probably be a bigger factor on the thrust block for the precast. Is that right?
As far as, well, even our cast in place are supposed to be on undisturbed when you do your triangles. The point of us trying to get to a precast is everything to be uniform. Sometimes you'll have, say, the water line is put too close to a trench side. And so you're not going to get, per our old detail, your X length, X width, and everything. This is just basically to kind of help make installation uniform across the board. You're not having somebody install, and I'm just making these numbers up, 10 yards of concrete when you only need 2 yards, but then you have somebody come in and want to put like half a yard in when you require the additional. Does that make sense? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the one with the experience with using them. It's the bearing pressure and everything's going to be the same. It's just you're going to drop a preformed one in the hole instead of forming up, mixing your concrete in your hoe and then putting it down there.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think what Ryan was probably saying is, as it is now, pouring the concrete so its back edge is against undisturbed bearing soil. With a precast, it wouldn't be up against undisturbed soil. And yeah, so one of the things that I thought of is maybe its surface area and weight probably have more to do with it than needing to be against undisturbed soil.
Yeah, I've used them in large trenches, where but it's making sure compaction of those areas are done well. And then when we put the precast in there, we haven't seen movement of those or problems. Because we use the right size of that. So we've defined a size as well of the concrete so that.
And I think, if it's all getting rewritten, it would probably work just fine. But the way it was currently, it wasn't clear.
Okay. And are you also asking a question too of what happens if you overdig your trench and you have a gap between the thrust block?
Yes,
It's not native. That's
primary.
So how are you going to handle that as far as, are you going to compact behind that thrust block where you've over excavated the trench, and how do you handle the fact that it's no longer in situ material that you're putting it against?
Yes. So, maybe clarifying a compacted screened rock in behind it. Something like that would solve that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so if it becomes disturbed because, even yeah, how do you do that? And like if your bank falls off and now you have 3 feet behind this and there's a gap, how do we handle that? Right, yeah.
And just
Yeah, very good. Thank
Okay.
you.
backflow prevention, we'll skip right to that. I assume nobody else had questions about 30. In this was really to highlight what's happening with with breweries coming in. There's issues, backflow prevention. My apologies. It's really just to have certified folks testing this, what's required to be put in, how's that look, what happens on an annual basis, who tracks that, and those requirements. And this really lays that out, and it's based on state requirements. So it's consistent with what the state requires and what should be happening here in town. So we think it'll bring a consistency. It wasn't really addressed much at all in these standards before, so now we've identified that. Section 40 is an existing section from wastewater collection system. It highlights in here again the tracer wire and then the private systems and what's the expectation of that. In general, the section didn't change much beyond those two items. There were some modification, but they weren't major changes we were focusing on. On section 42 with manholes, we added a part to that for cleanouts so that that's better defined in terms of what the expectation is on the cleanouts, where there's going to be, how that's going to look. We've also updated the details that we'll show you in a little bit related to just the manholes in general, what's expected, what's going to be happening with those. Section 44 is water and sewer line crossing. I think the biggest thing, we always want to see a wider separation between water and sewer. Those of us that have done this a while, sometimes that's not possible. So we're starting with the expectation there is going to be a separation in there. And if it gets where it can't happen and the city says, yep, you're right, we can't do that separation, these are changed to manage that. And we've also added a section on requirements around storm drainage. So those have been updated and modified, I think, to fit with what's going on today. The next section is wastewater pretreatment, which I was trying to talk about for a few minutes. And really just look at, we've put in here sand oil separator, grease interceptors, and then when you have a brewery, there's issues because when a brewery puts out, they hit the system with a lot of material and it really causes problems. So we've defined when pretreatment is required, what's required, and how that's going to look. So whenever there's industry that occurs here, this section will really have a lot of impact on that. And we think improve what can happen in sewer treatment and with the maintenance of lines and not getting plugging. I've had experience where a brewery was pushing out so much material, we were getting plugging all the time and problems with that. And so we think this will help resolve how that's going to look and what's going to go on with that. The next section is lift stations and force mains. And, of course, the city would rather not see lift stations if it can be done with gravity and put the lines out and make that happen. Then that's obviously the way that the city would like to see this go. But if not, then there's a defined process and a defined requirements for what the lift station should look like and how those force mains should work. So this is brand new, and again, for those of you who are designing, we would recommend that you take a look at that. The last section is section 48, which is lining of sewer pipes, and again, that's to help manage and deal with maintenance of systems that are out there for a while and starting to have problems. In addition to those, we've, if you go to the updated details, we've added quite a few details to the process here, and we've highlighted those in blue for your advantage to take a look at those and make sure you understand what we're looking for and what's happening with those standards. I'll take you through a couple of those. If we go to, let's see, I'm going to skip a couple things. We're going to go to 29, Jake, I think. And these are the crossings. So those details have been updated and now reflect a little bit better as to what's happening and what the expectations are. On 30, we have a couple different items. One's a detail of a drop outside of the manhole, and the other one is how secondary service lines might work here in town and the expectations of what's private, what's public, and what's going on with those items. So we've updated that. We've added, I think, some information on air release valves and pressure reducing valves as well. And then I think somebody mentioned, we have our thrust block details on page 33. And we'll look through that and make sure that we're not giving you conflicting information with the precast information that we've talked about today. I think those are great questions, and that's what we're here for. Page 34 is looking at backflow devices and those requirements, and then the standard lift station requirements. And then we continue with oil sand separator, grease interceptor, details on what those requirements are. And then the process and expectations on the lift station. So those are our updated, and then we have our Appendix A, which is our requirements and checklists that we're going to have for all plans. Will have a checklist so that you know what we're looking for on each one of those. And so we've included that as well in this process. That is a quick overview to make sure that you know where we've spent our time. And I'm looking to see if there's any other questions on this part that we've gone through now.
Yeah, just looking at the crossing condition detail there. It specifies crossing condition for all pipes with less than 18 inches of clear between them. But then there's a dimension measured on the detail that says 18 inches, and it measures from the top of the concrete encasement, which is 6 inches above the pipe, to the nearest pipe. So really this would apply to when you have, what, 24 inches of separation there? If you're going 6 inches of concrete above the pipe, then you have 18 inches from the top of the concrete to the next pipe. That's
Sam, we'll look at that.
Okay.
And see what's going on with that.
Also, the insulation board is that, I believe that was an update, and that's for when you have less than 1 foot of separation at less than 6 feet of bury.
Right.
So that would be in addition to the concrete encasement, insulation board on top of the concrete, or?
We're looking at insulation in between there to make sure that we had separation, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for noticing that. Any other questions? Here's one.
Just a couple things maybe to think about. Where you guys want test stations for your sewer?
I didn't hear him.
Where you want test stations for your sewer tracer wire? Some people want them in the manhole. Some people want a test station outside the manhole. And
Okay.
then maybe standard details for townhome water and sewer services where they share service. That seems to come up a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are really good points. Any other questions on Teams? Anybody on Teams have any questions? Anybody else in the room have any general questions, comments? I want to.
So again, the intent is to point you in the right direction on what we've been working on, and then to get you to review that, send your comments to the city.
Yeah.
I guess to you, Michelle, probably.
Directly to me, and then we will, as a group, get together and discuss each of them and certainly address ones that we can for sure.
And then I think we'll put back out over the next couple of weeks we took down all of your comments, and we'll take that and respond directly to each one of those. So you know, if you've made those comments, you can go look through there and make sure you have an answer to that and where those responses are and what we've said to that, okay? And that will make that a little bit clearer. And then we'll have that over the next probably month. We'll be close to finish with those and then get final and ready to go.
Yeah. So we've gotten some great comments and input today already. And again, the intent is to collect all the comments, suggestions by the end of the day on Friday, May 12th. And then for the following 2 weeks, hopefully we'll be able to incorporate all of those and respond. And with the intent of the updated specs and standards going into effect on June 1st. Obviously, that might be pushed back depending upon what additional work we want to do to address certain comments. If it's going to take longer, then we'll certainly reach out and let you know. But we really want to hear from you guys, and we're grateful for you being here and all of your input. This is exactly what we're looking for. So really appreciate your time and looking at these and catching any sort of maybe mistakes or some conflicting information, but that's what we're looking for. So thank you guys, really appreciate it. Again, these documents, I just posted them on the city's utilities website electronically if you're looking for them. If you've provided your email up there, I'll go through and email everybody the link that's here. And if you have any questions or you want to stick around and talk to us about anything, please feel free. And also, if you have questions, also please feel free to contact myself, Amber, or Brian when you're going through these and you have questions. But certainly, if there's a specific comment or suggestion that you want us to address, please direct that to me if you could. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody on Teams. Appreciate you guys being here. Thanks, girl.